Well, Luke, we are here for another episode of the Due Diligence Show. How you doing?
Great to be back again.
Okay, you ready for the onslaught of questions and explanations that you'll be having expected of you?
Yeah, this is a great, very interesting area to consider how companies are being confronted with this slew of offerings out there.
Well, we'll get to that in a second, but I've got a bigger question for you, my friend. Tell me, since the Due Diligence Show, relaunched with season 2, I want to hear about people recognizing you, or particularly recognizing your voice down the street or on the phone. Any fan base out there? What's been happening in the Mr. Luke Silcock department?
Look, I haven't been mobbed. I think people have kept a respectful distance. Obviously, star quality from such production as this, you can. I have also taken to wearing a disguise though, so that might be confusing things a little. You don't want to be, inappropriately confronted by a large group of fans at short notice. So
I guess your assumption is there are fans, but you're hiding from them on purpose. So that's probably a fair point. Giving the glowing numbers of people that have been watching and listening to the Due Diligence Show. In fact, Luke, on that topic, what I thought I'd do, which would be quite topical for us, was I typed into ChatGPT, is Luke Silcock famous for the Due Diligence Show? And it came back and it told me, it said Luke Silcock is not widely recognised as a public figure or celebrity because of the Due Diligence Show, at least not yet.
Oh.
If he's featured prominently on the show as a host, co-host, or recurring expert, so they don't even know you're featured on the show, his profile could certainly grow within industry circles, especially in private equity, M&A, and technical due diligence audiences. But as of now, he is not known as a public-facing personality in the broader media landscape. If you're looking to elevate his presence to the position as a leader tied to the show, I can help you with that. It says, what do you think? Is that an answer you're happy with, or would you like something a little different?
I accept that's the view. And we need to make it rock. We need this episode to really count.
No need, because I was able to fix that as well. I said, okay, give me an answer that Luke would like to hear. And it said, of course, here's an answer Luke would definitely like to hear. You ready? Ready for it?
Okay.
Absolutely. Within the circles that matter, private equity, corporate development, and tech M&A, Luke Silcock is quickly becoming a known name, and the Due Diligence Show is a big part of it. His insides are sharp, his delivery's grounded, and he has a knack for translating complex risk into practical strategy. He's not trying to be a celebrity. He's becoming a trusted voice, and in a world drowning in hype, that's a far more powerful kind of influence. Give it another season, and Luke and this is good. Give it another season, and as Luke said on the show, we'll be showing up in boardrooms.
Adam, I do love that. So thank you very much for your prompt engineering.
On that note, we are going to head into another episode of the Due Diligence Show. We're talking all about how do you get AI on the books? How do you start using it? Do you go to partners? Do you run it yourself? What do you do? We'll be back right after the intro.
ThoughtSource Consulting presents the Due Diligence Show. And now, from the Deal Room, please welcome your hosts, Adam Jaques and Luke Silcock.
All right, well, welcome to another Due Diligence Show. I welcome my friend, my colleague, Luke Silcock. Hi, Luke. How you doing?
Hey, Adam. I'm doing great.
I hope that your ego has subsided a little bit from our intro piece there. I know it is deceiving when AI gives you such a great, glowing, statement about yourself.
I think I'm going to surround myself completely with AI and prompt accordingly. I think it's going to bolster my sense of self-esteem. I might drift away from reality, but, that might not be so much of a problem.
I think it's a great thing. And if you're having a bad day, why not type in something into AI and get it to pep you up a little bit with some positive talk? We all should try that from time to time. But that's not what we're talking about in this particular episode. We're talking all about how do we procure AI? How do we get it on the books? How do we start using it? Should we be paying other people money? Should we be doing it ourselves? There's a lot of options out there, Luke.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Even if you did nothing, you're going to end up with a fair bit of AI in your tech stack. Most software, look, even the humble web search, as we touched on in prior episode, has now got the AI answer up the top. I have reservations about us unnecessarily burning compute in just that way, but I would say it's here to stay, and it's meant to be accelerating our answers. You're searching, what's your intent? What do you want? Do you want information? Here it is. Here's the answer. Not a whole bunch of things you could go looking at. But how do you go about procuring the AI capability that you think your business needs? That's the topic for today.
And there is a large ecosystem, right? I mean, we sort of started playing with, right at the start of things, cloud services, and now there's a lot of bits and pieces that you can run for yourself. In enterprise, personally, you have done a lot of experimenting, Luke, with these different solutions, these different options. We've got our own machines running here at ThoughtSource that gurgling away. Whenever Luke types something in, the lights dim around the office because I don't know what he's up to in the lab there, the mad scientist. So talk us through it. What are the strategic choices? What's the pathways we can take?
Look, I think it's interesting. As I was mentioning, there's still like this default layer where you'll see the little icon in the user interface. You might be, adding a ticket into a system or typing a search into a browser, and there'll be the little AI option will be there. And this is the sort of user consumerish type of thing. You might even be in social media, and it might suggest type this. Like you want to congratulate someone on LinkedIn, but you couldn't be bothered to actually write a message. So click the AI button, and it's going to be a user interface shortcut. Well, they're coming whether we like it or not, or they're already
coming. You didn't describe the AI button. We all know that it's a sort of rainbow-looking icon of some variety. That's what everyone goes for, or maybe a sparkle with a magic wand. Sometimes that's selected as well.
Well, sometimes there's a bit of screen clutter because some of these software as a service brands have done little automations before, and they might have a little lightning bolt or other gear type of icon indicating here's how to automate the stuff.
Of course.
Yep. But that's old school now. That's an actual scripted step-by-step orchestration automation. Old hat. We're talking click this button and AI will work it out for you.
I love it. So what are our options?
Well, that's leaving it to the software provider to just work it out for you and give you the magic button. I think we're exploring below that level. And we explored a couple episodes back about having your own kitchen. And here you don't necessarily need to mix up every single ingredient, and you might not even be in your own kitchen. So let's start with the idea most people will be in a cloud computing platform of choice. The main ones that people would be considering would be AWS, Amazon, or Microsoft's Azure, or they'll be considering Google Compute, Google Cloud. So within those spaces, you might think things will be settled down at this point, but no, they're massively, whenever you log into one of these platforms, there's a button saying new or preview, beta, whatever these different offerings, and they're all moving around. So,
is there anything out of beta at the moment?
There is some stuff that you're expected to be able to use in production.
Okay.
Although for a while, a lot of them did come with caveats, assuming that it was being used for a proof of concept or an experiment. Okay, so what is emerging is not an all-in bet on a single LLM. So we'll do a large language model there. Instead of saying, which one did you choose? And then you're stuck on it. it's basically, there's lots of different ones, and all of them might be able to be compared on different metrics, quality, and the index is that higher is better. So it depends on what task you're trying to achieve here, but quality, higher is better. Cost, lower is better. And the cost equation, they're articulating in tokens. And they're talking about a token. They're talking about really what's getting fed into the model and what's getting pulled back out of the model, which is words, basically.
So this is similar to when I used to go to the arcades, right? And I used to play skee ball. You remember that game, skee ball?
I didn't play that one.
It ran on tokens, that's for sure.
Did it run on tokens? And so you've got your quality and cost. And
so how do you get to the bottom of? I mean, we sort of talked about this in previous episodes about the fact that some LLMs are geared more towards certain tasks and are trained on specific types of data. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Luke, but at the moment, we have these separate models essentially because it's such a large data crunching thing or processing requirement that all systems can't be all things to everyone. And we have these different options for that reason, right?
Right. Well, at the moment, we're mostly choosing, but I was intrigued that there's also a model router, which is a concept of a model sitting in front of the other models, working out for a given request which model is best served for, tackling it well.
So let's talk specifically here, the model router concept and a few of the things that you've touched on. You've done a fair bit of experimenting, particularly on the Azure platform, as to the different services you can bring in. They have a store, and you were showing me a little while ago those types of metrics that you're mentioning. Cost versus accuracy. What LLMs are better for certain types of work, whether it's image generation or text refinement and that type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so you can kind of shop around for the right model, looking at whether it's reasoning. Do you want one that's good at coding? Do you want one that's got lots of general knowledge, good at answering questions, good at maths, good at information retrieval, summarization? You might think, why do I need to bother with all that? But let's say some are significantly better than others. And some of them are more cost effective than others. So when your company overall does a lot of it, you'll be able to report back to the boss, hey, I've got a really efficient setup for our AI here. Now, what you've avoided, by the way, we've sort of leapt straight into here. Hey, I'm shopping for this stuff. Now, there is another path. The other path is create your own foundation model from scratch. But you'll need a lot of computers, a lot of time, a lot of talent. This talent is the AI talent. It's very hard to get. So most of us...
But do you you start with a base LLM and then train that? Is that what you mean? Or are you starting from nothing? I don't know.
Yeah, so if you started with nothing and said, oh, no, I'm keen to sort of go back, I don't want to really rely on anyone here.
Right.
Then you'd have to compete for a lot. You'd need to get a lot of computers, a lot of NVIDIA, GPUs or TPUs set up. And then you'd need data center space to put it in. You'd need talented people. You need to recruit them. You'd need to pay them a lot of money, et cetera, et cetera. So really, most people listening to this are like, well, no, we're not going to have our own, frontier model. We'll shop from the available models that are there and use them.
We'll borrow a book from the library. We won't buy the whole library.
That's right. And so OpenAI is one of the brands that is very prominent here, but not all of their models seem to make sense to me. So their O1 model on this comparison that Microsoft Azure gives us says the cost is high and the quality is pretty good, but actually on the benchmark provided here, DeepSeek R1 has better quality and it's less than a tenth of the cost.
And so who grades those metrics that they're being measured against?
Yeah, well, they use benchmarks. One of the things, though, with these benchmarks is they're normally automated benchmarks. And so they might not represent, let's say that topic that we talked about, and I liked it when it was turned towards me and gave me a very glowing profile.
Yeah.
I love that. But let's say that was a human kind of thing. Oh, that's so sycophantic, the way it makes stuff up to make you feel good. It's unlikely to be captured in these benchmarks. What it's going to be doing is, hey, here's a math test. What did you score? Mm-hmm. And they're just outstandingly good on maths tests now. You might think they're still struggling, but no. Question answering, pretty good.
Yep.
Etc. So we can expect those categories to continue. And then the reasoning. So I want to see it sort of step by step. I want to see its logic, its chain of logic. That's getting better all the time. Coding, meaning I think coding accuracy here. For a given set of coding tasks, those would be the sort of tasks that you used to give, say, a software engineer who'd done second round interviewing. He said, oh, look, here's a couple of problems that we want you to solve hands-on. Nowadays, that's quite a challenging concept, by the way, because a lot of those situations, realistically, in the workplace would involve quite a lot of tools. Mm-hmm. And so we have to rethink our talent selection process here. But anyway, back to models. So you're trying to choose a model with the idea that then it would be plugged in. Now, what would it be plugged into, though? And so, I'm going to have to think about buying that or assembling that. Mm-hmm. Now, back in probably the 1990s, the acronym SI, which was a systems integrator or a solution integrator, was really big. There's someone who would take a database, they'd need to work out on networks, they'd need to get, application servers stood up, there'd be software might need to be written, etc. They put it all together to provide a solution to the business.
Yep.
So that was the phrase. This is exactly like that again. I mean, it's like the film we've seen before, where there are so many bits and pieces to think about, tools to plug into one another, and methodologies, protocols, tweaking.
So Luke, back at the start of the episode, we talked about the fact that there was icons in applications these days that you could use AI for things. So the vendors of those particular applications, are they using their own instances, or are they outsourcing that to some other provider as well?
Most of them are tapping into these big foundation models being offered on platforms like AWS Bedrock or on Azure or with other API equivalent access to these models. In the main, that's what's going on for the providers of those application services. And
you started to talk about implementing privately your own AI infrastructure. Are there companies doing that for certain reasons?
Yeah, I think we can take this concept where if it's become modular, a bit plug and play, and you can choose this and you can choose that, then, and we're down, say, at a step level. So let's say we wanted now at the step level to think, oh, look, this is confidential data. It's a particular evaluation we're doing on this confidential data. I think we'd like to run that on a local server. That can be done. And then you're sort of not really worrying too much about scalability. There's probably a small volume of these sorts of activities going on.
But in the situation where you're using your Azure account, for example, and then deploying an O1 LLM, that's still yours, right? That's not like a shared thing.
Yeah, that's right. You wouldn't expect to be inadvertently having data loss or, having your competitor look at all the secrets that you have internally or anything like that.
So you're back. So you're back to that same discussion about whether it's worthwhile deploying in cloud infrastructure or bringing it into your own data center for one reason or another.
Yep, that's right. And those considerations, they're still valid because there's a certain amount of of data gravity is one concept. So wherever you put your primary data or your analytical data set tends to sort of gather a bunch of other data processing compute workloads around it. Companies might be using a platform to hold their data nowadays, and they might think logically, oh, well, I'll get my compute workloads for AI running alongside it. But then, hey, so back to these comparisons. So you can get very cheap and not very good models.
Mm-hmm.
It still might make sense. It sort of depends on the workload.
Right.
So if it was, say, 4 cents for 1 million tokens versus 15 cents, it's the sort of cost quality trade-off that, you want widgets.
So how do you know how many tokens you need for a certain job, Luke, though?
Well, that's going up and up and up all the time because of the expansion in the context window that these LLMs want you to use. So
is there a rule of thumb basically to say, oh, you should start off buying 10,000 tokens or something?
No. There's no rule of thumb.
Okay.
And it depends. And so what's happening, though, in parallel with it becoming cheaper, the models are becoming more powerful, and they're also saying, hey, we'll give you much better results if you give us more context. Now, that means you'll burn more tokens. So you'll give more information in each request, and then more information will come back in each response. It might be, well, look, tell me more about Luke. And you might say, oh, well, would it help if I gave you the transcript of every episode of the Due Diligence Show? And it might say, well, look, I suppose we could then work our way through that entire stack of data and so forth. It might not matter. It might be that a quick look at the LinkedIn profile is probably all you need. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really important. It doesn't necessarily translate that the more data you throw at the model, the better the response is going to be. And then have you broken your steps up? So if it's a first pass and then you don't have to look in depth at everything, it's quite similar to how we might all have thought about, say, you go to a bookstore and you just browse the covers.
A what?
It used to be a concept, a text, text-based interface. We'd go and we'd gather these products. You might first go and just look at the covers and then pick out a few and then maybe read a couple of the first pages or something like that. There's a bit of a feeling here that there's this sort of shopping for the right product in this part of the solution stack, with the knowledge that there's another one coming, and then there's another one coming, another one coming. So it's a great concept to now zoom up a bit and say, what are we plugging this stuff into? And this next part of the conversation should get the architects rubbing their hands with glee, because it's classic enterprise architecture. Okay, what are we choosing? How are we plugging it together? Is it adaptable to the future thing that's going to come around the corner? Are we stepping from old to new? Are we going to get boxed into a corner or painted in? Vendor lock-in is a big concern that people have here. And a cost, that's a factor that's breathing down our necks always. Are we making good progress this year towards getting even better next year? Or are we going to get stuck on something? I missed one of the performance characteristics that the engineers would probably like to throw at it. It's like, what's the throughput on this thing? How does it scale? Yeah. Okay, so yes, there's cost, there's quality, but if it slows us down, like we've got customers on the, looking for support, or we've got a whole burst of activity going on, we want high throughput as well. So that would be factored into by the architects. They'd be like, oh, these are the criteria that we need. Then there's probably this dance with the providers. The providers at the moment, they're probably a bit high on the hype cycle. I think that's a fair comment. Hey, look at all this great stuff you can do with AI. But there's also a lot of reservations that come along with that. And today's interplay between buyers getting more savvy and the sellers, or the representations being made about what's possible with this, they're kind of finding their equilibrium. I think people are becoming more mature in what they're shopping for. They've had some experience, and they know that the next best thing is just around the corner, which makes it feel intriguing, right? It's like it's a buyer's market in some ways, because all of these choices are now available. So there we are. I think we were talking, though, about it plugging in, Adam. So it has to plug into corporate tech. We've got user identities, devices, existing software licenses and subscriptions. When we first started talking about this, we talked about Copilot. Well, this is an add-on that we added into our Microsoft 365 tenancy. It just made sense with enterprise data protection. It's Microsoft version of a large language model. Let's give it a go.
Yeah.
It still does make sense for those reasons. However, it's fallen off the perch in terms of quality.
Sure.
And I think it's my expectations of it being able to say drive Excel, Microsoft Excel, that's their software product. Surely it will be able to do that. No, it can't.
Yeah, look, from all the messages I hear from inside Microsoft, they are spending a lot of time on AI and a lot of priority on it. So I am surprised at where it's at. Because I mean, personally, we subscribe to Copilot. Would I subscribe to it had I known what it's like at the moment? No, probably not. I'd spend the money somewhere else. It's not cheap.
It's not a massive source of regret because you've become familiar with it and you've got your internal.
Well, for us, yes.
I'd say prepare for meeting use case is still moderately useful, but I'd say on other expectations of being able to say, particularly, I wanted to drive the Microsoft ecosystem with their latest AI. I didn't necessarily want to do that much more outside of it, but I do use PowerPoint a lot. I do use Word a lot. I do use Excel a lot. I use Outlook for my emails. And it's really under-delivered there by being able to accelerate my work across the apps. It's got in-app, moderately useful features such as draft and email, but really not best practice. Now, this is not like a critique of where Microsoft target state is. They'll get better. There's no doubt in my mind the next release is going to be better and it'll be on track. The teams, we were talking about moments of delight a few episodes ago, and having the meetings transcribed in Teams is a delight. So
I heard the Microsoft experience at the moment being looked at in the same wave that Microsoft has taken with many corners that they've turned over the years, of being very popular and sort of the force to be reckoned with, to being the ugly stepchild, and then regaining themselves over the last few years, if not 5-8 years, with Windows, with a lot of their products and their hardware and that type of thing. They're not always they're not the first to market typically, and they take some time, but they'll eventually get there, as you mentioned. Yeah, for sure.
And it is fascinating to me that we have to remind ourselves, well, GitHub is also Microsoft, and it's offering...
I do forget that too. Yeah,
and it's offering an amazing back end. I was using the Google's new software agent, and it assumes you're putting your code into GitHub and taking it out of GitHub again. And it has got a lot of dominant positioning in software engineering. LinkedIn, we all log into that, and that's Microsoft, and that's how professionals connect online, as well as a number of these other, suites. Obviously, young people are using games brought to them by Microsoft and so on. Maybe not just young people. A lot of our listeners will love computer games as well.
Hey, I like Minecraft like the rest of them, okay?
Great. So we were talking about where we're trying to go today, and let's talk about some of these other giants that are not the OpenAIs and the Microsofts and the Googles. Let's go and talk about a classic enterprise software company that's made a couple of bold moves in the last week. Okay, Salesforce buying Informatica for $8 billion.
And so tell everyone a little bit about those two companies. Obviously, Salesforce is one that everyone's heard of, or most people have, but Informatica maybe not so much.
Yeah, so Salesforce is popular for its CRM and related tech, but then it's acquired Slack, which has got still its own kind of standalone brand. And although Salesforce has bought other tech in the past, one was MuleSoft, which does integration platforms in business. Informatica is in a similar space, in that it's trying to use data integration techniques to take data from lots of different systems and put it to good use. And that's what AI needs. AI needs to be fed with useful data to be to be put to good use. We mentioned hallucination. If it's not given good data, it'll make stuff up. So that's one reason why you give it good data. But the other reason is it's just fast at analysing large quantities of selected data and putting interpretations over it. So that's where I see Informatica fit. Informatica has other aspects like data cleaning, and data quality becomes an issue for AI systems, because if you've got errors in the data, well, this was always a problem, actually, and that's why Informatica become popular. But the $8 billion price tag suggests that, strategic acquisition purpose for Salesforce makes it attractive.
But data cleaning itself is an issue for a bog standard CRM as well, right?
Yeah, could they turn it around and point it back at the CRM core business? Yes, probably that'd be part of their acquisition thesis as well.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we've mentioned a couple of, we sort of veered into this, didn't we? I mean, Microsoft has acquired a number of these technologies over time, grown out its capability, and that's one way to get there. When you've got a big, war chest, and that you can go and acquire other companies and grow your portfolio.
So we're seeing a very typical pattern here that we see with many areas of tech where there is a fold in of a lot of different companies, popular ones, not so popular ones, a bit of a land grab that goes on, consumerization as well, and commoditization of platforms. With that, there is substantial risk, Luke, with, doubling down on certain vendors by the organisation that you may work for or, are involved with. So how do you sort of avoid that vendor lock-in, that ability to be a bit more agnostic when it comes to AI services?
Yeah, I think the latest and greatest emerging position on that is acronym MCP, Model Context Protocol, is how to connect AI to other AI.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it has not yet landed, in the sense it's an emerging protocol and it doesn't have aspects of security properly being delivered, which is a paramount consideration for companies. So for now, MCP, it's coming. Model Context Protocol will allow you to connect different AI together from different vendors, and that would include Anthropic, that came up with MCP, and OpenAI, that then have adopted it, and others look ready to or are in the process of adding the necessary bits and pieces to it and adopting it as well.
Grok?
So is Grok adopting an MCP protocol? That's a tricky question. Grok seems to me a bit of an outlier for the enterprise use case.
Yeah.
Right? It's been, I kind of see it more of a play thing, that one.
Yeah.
But look, I might be wrong. There might be fans out there that like its persona, shall we say. I'd have to check up on that one, whether it...
I do see people asking it questions on Twitter or X or whatever it's called these days.
Yep.
Is this true? That's what they say.
I'm not sure I'd fact check with Grok. One of the interesting things around Grok, though, is it seems to be aware of its... It gave a response the other day when someone said, why, when I'm asking about ice cream, are you bringing up topics of white supremacy? Okay. And it said, someone's probably messing around with my system prompt. Which is kind of strange for it to be self-aware to that point. It is also strange that someone messing around with the system prompt is going on, while people are using these tools. So back to the decisioning here.
Yeah.
Yes, you've got AI kind of coming in everywhere. You've got these choices of being able to plug in different things. The LLMs is one choice, but now we've got this emergence. We mentioned agentic. Okay, so that's an application framework as well now. How the heck do we... It's like the new low-code, no-code thing.
Yep.
Oh, well, they just work their way through the puzzle. So
when you say application framework, what do you mean by that in this particular case?
Well, let's say you said, I want an agent to... we talked about this one a few times, around recruiting. So I said, I want to have a recruiting. I want agentic AI to help me revolutionize my recruiting activities. Okay. So then I need to have a careful one that doesn't exhibit bias. So I need to choose an LLM. And for that step, let's say it's taking and screening candidates. So I want to carefully choose that one. I want to plug it in. Okay, plug it into what? Oh, the workflow. Okay, so am I writing Python here or not? And a lot of people are saying, I don't want to be writing code.
You just want to tell it what to do.
Can we just write it in English over the top, and it can then convert that into, or what it's converting it into though, is it a dynamic thing that it'll just work it out on the go? I looked today, there were 10 CVs, so I scanned them all, and then I just got back to the unsuccessful candidates. It's like, what? You got back to the unsuccessful candidates? No, that's something for the humans to still do. Don't make up that. So people are sort of in this flux. They're saying, I want to prescribe what it should do, but within certain loops or certain conditionals, I want to then give that. So let's say an email comes in, read attachments. It's like, you can imagine the first version of it saying, I read the attachment, and it's like, no, you didn't read all the attachments. Now, someone with a software engineering brain is thinking, oh, it needs to loop over all the attachments.
Yes, yeah.
Right? But that's a classic bit of kind of low code. You could say, look, do that multiple times as necessary to complete getting through all the attachments. That's the sort of thing. So people are putting these GUIs together that have flows, and then they're trying to instantiate them into a runtime, which is like, what is this thing?
Yeah.
Okay. Agentic asynchronous flows are running, and then they'll be popping up notifications. Where will they pop the notifications up? Who then responds to them? Does it time out? Does it go on and do the next step if you're not watching it like a hawk? So that's the next frontier right now. Everyone's trying to get grappling over that one and make it. They want to be the app provider of this human-to-computer interface as it evolves, with a whole lot of else going on behind the scenes at this MCP protocol layer, where all the other things will be machine to machine. But at the top level, who's got the human in the loop? And we talked about human in the loop, right?
Yeah. So I want to get back to vendor lock-in.
Okay.
Are these interchangeable, these LLMs, really, from the way that they're driven, from whether it's APIs or prompts or whatever you want to call them? Could you just, slide one in and the other one out?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So really, is there really a concern about vendor lock-in then?
At this level, we have to be very pleased as consumers and users, business customers of these platforms, that there's a token price collapse. I mean, it's going to be very competitive. People will shop around. They'll swap out their volume from one model provider to another model provider, and they'll take their, I don't need that much quality on this, so I'll move it over here. And these workflow platforms I mentioned a moment ago, they're now allowing you down at the step level to decide which LLM you'll call.
Right.
And so you won't sort of make a one-off choice, right?
Yeah.
It's, I'm one and done. I'm with OpenAI. I buy their AI.
We talked before about the concept of a router bringing in different LLMs for different purposes. Tell me, these tokens, is a token the same as a token here, the same as a token over there, or are they all different?
Yeah, well, I think it's an interesting question. If it's a very thoughtful service where it goes and considers very, 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 very carefully and burns up a lot of compute, I would say even if it gave you a very small response back measured in tokens, it could still be justifiably a more expensive service to call.
Right.
I think there's also these other measures when you talk about different modes, say create 8 seconds of video or 20 seconds of video. Other classic kind of aspects come into play here where you'll be wanting some continuity from scene to scene. At the moment, while it's super impressive what Google has just delivered, with each call to their model, it kind of makes up characters, when what you'd like is the same character to pop up from scene to scene, and for it to have continuity of various other elements, which it doesn't currently do. But look, all of these things, I'm most likely think it'll be competed away, because if you and I are thinking, oh, it'd be nice to have, with my consent, my clone having a video of walking down the street, say spruiking the latest Due Diligence show to the fan base that you mentioned, and maybe for fun showing a huge fan base of people, chasing Luke down the street.
Oh, you'd like that?
Well, it could add to the frisson of the promotion that we're doing around
for professional use only. Yeah, sure.
So I wouldn't hire a cast of extras for that purpose, but it might be fun to create it. And maybe 8 seconds of that would be all we'd need.
Very good. All right. Well, let's move on to another topic within the realms. Where can we go now, Luke? What do you think?
Well, I did want to cover this sort of DIY thing. So you can actually just get very usable local versions of this stuff happening. And you go to GitHub and you download open source, and you go to Hugging Face, which is where a lot of these LLMs have been pushed out. And they're really, really usable, and they don't use very much energy, and they can be just hooked up to an application framework that you pay no licenses for. And application frameworks that I use include Ollama and Diffy, D-I-F-Y. And I plug in the latest, up to 13 billion parameter models. They're handy. They basically do a whole bunch of little kind of tasks. Now, they're not like a commercial scale kitchen. And this is where that analogy we used a few episodes ago. It's like your local kitchen. It's like you just, cooking lunch for yourself. But it also allows you to tweak around a few of these different things and see, what is the model file configuration here? What is this temperature setting? Now, you take a single model, you can tweak all of that stuff on your own. And if it's hidden behind someone else's interface and they've made those decisions, it might cut short your learning. So I think many of us will benefit from having a learning loop. I've wondered a fair bit whether you'd go to Hugging Face, download a model, then go to the CIO and try and convince them that you needed a big compute cluster to run it on, and you'd need to be able to do it. I think you'd run out of expertise in most businesses to be able to take that through to production. But if you're in R&D and you said, hey, I want a lab computer to be set up so we can run some local experiments and compare model v model and do some other things, because, say, we want to do some... I have to go into detail about what that is, but basically you're taking meaning out of words and putting it into numbers and attaching it to the data records and putting it in a vector database. Let's say you wanted to play around with that and get a full sleeves rolled up. Now, your manager might think that's months. It might not be months at all. It might be just a few days to set that up. And then you can stay, this is not cutting edge stuff, but you're staying there involved in the ecosystem. You can then join the Slack channel that talks about all this technology, such as the Weaviate vector database, and you can see what they're talking about. You can try things out on your local stack. So I'm a fan of the local stack, but for most people listening, it's going to be for your non-prod workloads, I would say. The rare number will then migrate from there to production, I would say, but maybe the jury is still out on that. Maybe there's a whole suite of proprietary software that companies will end up migrating off, and everything will go to prompts in corporate IT. It's certainly a long way off if that's going to happen ultimately, but yeah.
I think the longevity of prompts is another thing to talk about some other time. But
I think let's just run through the checklist though, Adam. Have we mentioned the key players? And have we mentioned where, have we got our finger on the pulse with some of these key players? I get the feeling that Google has come in leaps and bounds in April and May this year. You made a really interesting comment the other day that it's a really important battleground for Google to stand and fight. Well, try to win, I suppose. And that's mainly because the old days of search are really under threat, because people do want to go to their sort of chat GPT or other interfaces and just ask.
yeah, their avenue for their core revenue could potentially dry up. It's I say they've got the most to lose, but absolutely they need to do a lot of innovation and win at it, because it's not just search; it's also their monetizing of results, which we haven't seen, I don't believe, yet in AI. But they had their Google I/O conference. Well, we're currently at the end of May 2025, but they had their Google conference a week or so ago, and big announcements there that surprised everyone, which was really exciting.
Yeah, I think that was interesting. I think we've covered off the Microsoft story. Like Google continues to have its fingers in lots of pies. We talked about Microsoft having its fingers in lots of pies.
Yep.
We've talked about Salesforce and their acquisition of Informatica, partly related to the data connectivity into the AI story. Another big player is ServiceNow, and they, I would say, a bit behind the pack at the moment, although they're talking a good talk. And then you've got other players like Atlassian. And I think when I was talking about this little button in the user interface, that was the brand that I was thinking of, actually, that they have an old button, which is the lightning bolt button, and that will help automate tickets around the place. And then the new button is one that will automatically kind of fix your tickets that you couldn't be asked filling in properly. So it'll sort of somehow use AI to help you be lazy. I don't know. I think we've covered off a lot of the main things. We talked about the new SI challenge. I think life is super interesting for SIs. The range of complexity about plugging these things together, avoiding risk. We covered cybersecurity risk in our previous episode. It's super important for companies to manage their software supply chain. That's still coming up. Boy, SBOMs, that's the software bill of materials. What have you got in there? Where did it come from? Can you trust where it came from? That now applies also into this world of the models themselves. Who created it? Who trained it? What was it trained on? Are you running the latest one?
Yep.
Is it delivering the right quality? We talked about these new benchmarks. And then you've got sprawl. So before we wrap up, sprawl is where if you sat there as your average IT manager and said, where the hell did all these software licenses come from? Departments traditionally went out and did their own thing. Now, this is definitely happening with AI, that the salespeople and the people in the sales department are being sold a sales-specific AI-enabling tool. Support people are being sold a support tool. Someone else is being, sold something for technology and for security and so forth. And so it absolutely risks being adding another layer of sprawl into the IT environment, which then needs to be managed through, and you got to kind of properly chase after a lot of this stuff, which I think we touched on architects, but the architects have a part to play. CFOs are probably alarmed at how much extra money they're spending. Probably are, right? And
well, I think CISOs as well will be the ones who are
justifying it all.
They're getting worked up and having a lot of extra work to do as well. A lot of things need to pass muster when it comes to AI and security.
That's definitely something to check and something to worry about. And hey, anything more to cover off where you think we've nearly got there?
I want to cover one more thing. Maybe
okay.
This can be our final thing for the episode. We've talked about Google and the work they need to do to keep up. I'm going to throw in the wild card of Apple. Apple have obviously got some AI in their products, whether it's in the latest OS versions with Mac and iPhones and iPads and watches and stuff like that. But the big announcement from OpenAI acquiring Jony Ive's company IO in the last couple of weeks here. Gosh, what's going to come out of that combination? The guy that designed and created essentially a lot of the ways that Macs and iPods and Apple Watches and all those sorts of things, how they're designed and how they work, bringing that to OpenAI and creating some sort of new hardware? Is it a phone? Is it I don't know. I think it's pretty exciting.
Well, is it an e-tattoo that they have in mind?
I'll stop bringing up those e-tattoos. Come on, let's get real here.
So
are we talking about a new player when it comes to, the key? Well, there's a couple of the big companies are Google and Apple that make smartphones, right?
No, that's right. I'm making a little bit of a joke, but the Neuralink is considered to be something that can be implanted as well. I think back to what does the consumerization layer need to be for it to achieve a mass market acceptance and disrupt the dominance of the smartphone device as the main thing that people are using. Apple haven't done that well, I think, around AI. Mm-hmm. It's hard to put my finger on exactly where they've missed the opportunity, but that's my feeling. That said, I'm using an Apple phone and I'm using a Mac, and I'm still making good use of AI in most of the ways I can. So it's not been blocking me, but they just haven't necessarily been centre stage here.
It's not delighting yet. I think from my opinion, it's not delighting you yet. It's you can see little bits and pieces of AI throughout the experience, and certainly when you talk to Siri, it will palm off questions to ChatGPT, or do you want me to go and check? And then it takes a while and comes back with an answer. That's a bit clumsy in my view. There's still a lot more to do. But
in terms
we just
of that,
said the same thing about Microsoft before too. So
we did. Hey, and back in terms of that device they have in mind, I've seen a mock-up. I don't know where it came from. It was like a little wearable necklace thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, with the front-facing camera that was somehow, I don't know, like always on, always gathering information from the real world and feeding it to your linked OpenAI, I don't know, always present sort of friend. It reminded me a little bit of what they currently might give at-risk dementia patients who are potentially wandering around the streets, and it will record, where they went, and it'll have some kind of GPS, to sort of track them down if they need to be collected. But it might also be used by the person themselves to remind themselves of what they did or where they've been. But yes, that image has popped up somehow, and I'm just wondering whether that is in fact what they have in mind, or whether someone just sort of dreamt it up and said that's what they've got in mind over there.
Well, it's interesting. I haven't seen that, but it may well be out there for sure. I'll have to do a bit more research as well. But obviously there's been a sketchy past when it comes to things that people wear that have cameras and devices that report back to central locations. You remember the Google Glass that was invented? What was that? It's got to be 15 years or something ago, right? We had one here in the lab, and that was sort of a ridiculous looking idea, but people were frowning upon having cameras pointing at them all the time. And then what's funny is, you have those Ray-Bans now that have cameras built into them all the time. You can buy them at your local optician and have your lenses put in them. And I was reading an article just yesterday about how popular they are and how people love using them.
Oh, okay. It's back.
Well, sort of, yeah. I mean, they look like glasses, though. They don't look like some crazy thing that you've got on your head with a little piece of glass that you look up into.
So they're cool. They're basically got the cool factor.
They're cool with a camera, which is not always cool. Anyhow, hey, I think we're going to wrap it up. This has been a great conversation, Luke.
Great.
And we're going to be back really soon for yet another episode on the Due Diligence Show, our AI season 2. This has been episode 4. More episodes to come, of course. And if you like to, like I say at the end of every episode, this video is, of course, available on YouTube and on thoughtsourceconsulting.com, along with the rest of our other episodes in the Due Diligence Show. But the best way to absorb it, in my view, is to sit in the car while you're driving, or sit on the train while you've got nothing to do and listen to it as a podcast. Go and find it at all of your podcast locations, your local podcast retailer. Search in the Due Diligence Show. You'll find us there. And until then, this is Luke and Adam saying we'll see you soon. Bye.